Council meeting for Monday, December 16th, 2019. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Marnie, will you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Leaks May.
Here.
Councilmember Music. Mayor Pro Tem Polika.
Here.
Councilmember Whitey.
Here.
And Mayor Martin.
Here. Next item is the approval of the agenda.
I move to approve the agenda as presented.
Support.
Moved by Polika, supported by Leaks May. Any discussion? You want to call the roll?
Councilmember Music.
Support. Or yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Polika.
Yes.
Councilmember Whitey.
Yes.
Councilmember Leaks May.
Yes.
And Mayor Martin.
Yes. And item number 4 is presentations, the financial statement presentation. Come on up.
Thank you.
Come on down.
My name is Aaron Stevens. I'm with Maynard Costerison, and we performed the audit for the fiscal year ended June 30, 2019. A couple of quick general comments before I get to the presentation. Our thanks to Cheryl and her team for their courtesy, cooperation, and assistance. I thought the fieldwork went well as usual. What I plan to do tonight is highlight what I think are the key areas. I do have a full set of the financial statements and the copy of the presentation handout that you have in front of you. If you've got particular questions about those, feel free to stop me at any time. We can go through the questions. On pages 1 through 3 of the bound report, the independent auditor's report, we have our opinion on your financial statements. And the purpose or objective of an audit is to provide or express opinions as to whether or not your financial statements are presented, fairly presented in all material respects in accordance with GAAP, or generally accepted accounting principles. The purpose of an audit is not to detect fraud or give you an opinion on your internal controls. Fraud detection, deterrence, and sound internal controls are management's responsibility. Now, that's not to say that if we found fraud, we wouldn't tell you about it. We certainly would. We would put that in a report on internal control. We would also include any recommendations on how to improve your internal controls in a report on internal control. Management's responsibility is management is responsible for the financial statements, and that would include the preparation, fair presentation, and internal controls over the financial statements. This is an excerpt that I've taken from the second paragraph of page 1 of the bound report. In the third paragraph on page 1 of the bound report, I have our responsibility as your auditors is to express opinions on the financial statements based on our audit, which I've already mentioned. And then in the second paragraph on page 2 of the bound report, we do express our opinions where the paragraph reads, in our opinion, the financial statements referred to above present fairly in all material respects. That is what we refer to as an unmodified opinion or a clean opinion. That present fairly in all material respects is the phrase that you're looking for in the audit report. That is the highest level of assurance that we can provide for a set of financial statements. To put that into some perspective for you, there are actually 3 opinions we could express. You have the unmodified opinion. We could express a qualified opinion that might read something like, except for capital assets, the financial statements are fairly presented. We could express an adverse opinion. The financial statements do not present fairly. Or the other alternative, the only other alternative we have would be to disclaim. We did not audit the financial statements of the city of Ferndale. So you do have the highest level of assurance that we can provide with that unmodified opinion. Pages 11 and 12 of the financial statements present the government-wide financial statements. These are prepared on the full accrual basis of accounting, which means they primarily have a long-term focus. The government-wide financial statements are prepared once a year. The only time you see this level of reporting is in your annual audited financial statements. I've included a copy of the statement of net position in your handouts that was left on your desk before the meeting started. And the statement of net position is a snapshot as of June 30th, 2019, of the city's assets, deferred outflows, liabilities, deferred inflows, and the net of all of that is your equity or net position. I've got a couple of financial highlights here. The governmental activities current ratio, 31 million divided by about 7.5 million. We've got a current ratio of 4.1, so you can cover your current obligations 4 times over with your current financial resources. And then another area that I like to look at is the net position section of the the statement of net position. And your total net position was $4.7 million. And included in that is $17.3 million of capital, 21.1 million restricted by your funding sources, another 3.1 million restricted for pension benefits. And so when you factor all of that out, you're left with a negative unrestricted net position of $36.8 million on the full accrual basis of accounting. Now, when you look at that, keep in mind that $30.3 million of your liabilities consists of your net OPEB liability. So your retiree health care calculates out a net pension liability of $30.3 million, which is what is driving that net position, the unrestricted portion, negative.
So Aaron, when you look at these ratios, what's the threshold for a healthy? Like, I look at that, go back to that 4.1. I mean, what's considered healthy?
Well, obviously, you don't want to be less than 1. If you're less than 1, you can't cover your current obligations. That's a liquidity issue. And so we don't really have a specific benchmark as to where you should be from year to year on your current ratio, but you want to compare yourself to yourself, over time. 4.1 is healthy. I would think you probably would start to become concerned if you were less than 2. You've got to probably have some red flags and say, okay, what can we do differently to keep liquidity? But there is no, I don't have a specific benchmark for you at this level of reporting.
Thanks.
For your business type activities, similar ratios here. The current ratio, $21.3 million in current assets divided by $3.3 million in current liabilities, gives your current ratio of 6.3. Again, sound liquidity there. Your total net position for your business type activities was about $28 million. That would include $19.2 million invested in capital assets, $1.9 million restricted for pension benefits because you do have a net pension asset that is recorded at the government-wide level, and then $6.8 million of unrestricted net position for the business type activities. Your business type activities would include your water and sewer as well as your parking. And we'll get into more detail in a few minutes on that because I've got some fund level presentation for the proprietary funds. Governmental funds, financial statements. Governmental funds, the financial statements are presented on the modified accrual basis of accounting, which means they have a current financial resources focus. So this should be a more familiar presentation for you. This is the level at which your budgets are prepared, and the interim reporting that you see throughout the year is done at the fund level. And we'll focus on the general fund here. And on the screen and in your packets, you have a 5-year bar graph of the general fund revenues, expenditures, and total fund balance. So the revenues and expenditures for the fiscal year June 30, 2019 were $21.4 million. So you had a change in your fund balance of 0. If you look at the bar graph, the last 3 years, your fund balance has been constant. You had no change in fund balance this year, no change in fund balance last year. So portions of that fund balance are considered non-spendable, restricted by external parties, or committed by the City Council. In the assigned and unassigned portions of fund balance, we collectively refer to as unrestricted. That is what you have. That's what you have available for future expenditure. Your unrestricted fund balance in the general fund was $5.8 million at June 30, 2019. That represents approximately 26% of your annual expenditures and other financing uses or transfers out to other funds. The Government Finance Officers Association recommends a minimum of 2 months of normal operations be maintained in your general fund. So we do have a benchmark at the modified accrual level here. 2 out of 12 months is about 17%, and as I said, you're at 26% in June 30, 2019. The composition of your general fund revenues on the pie chart here. Property taxes at 48%. That is your largest source of revenue. It shouldn't really be a surprise for anyone. And that is followed by intergovernmental revenue at 16%, and that would include your state share revenues, your sales tax, primarily.
Do you have a graph of how that's fluctuated over the years for us? Or?
I don't. I can. I could prepare one for you, but I don't have one tonight.
Oh, that's fine. Thanks.
Well, I do. I have last year's number written down. Last year, your property taxes were at 48%, so no change there. And your intergovernmental last year was at 18%.
Yeah, that's fine. I just probably wanted to prove a point everybody knows anyway. Thanks.
Okay, all right. Fairly consistent from year to year. On the expenditure side, the largest use of funds is public safety for the year ended June 30, 2019 at 55%. That was 59% for 2018. And then it's followed by general government at 23%. General government was 20% in 2018. This is a line graph that shows you the last 5 years of the unrestricted fund balance compared to expenditures in terms of percentages. And so you can see it's ranged from 25 to 30% over the 5-year period, well above the 17% minimum recommendation from the GFOA. So this is in terms of percentages, and this line graph is in terms of dollars. So the blue line is your actual, and that brownish red color, whatever that is 17% of the expenditures for each of those 5 years, respectively. The proprietary funds financial statements are on pages 17 through 19, and like I said earlier, proprietary funds include the water and sewer fund and the auto parking fund. Proprietary funds are also prepared on the full accrual basis of accounting, just like your government-wide financial statements. So what we see here in a few minutes, the information that I'm going to show you is the same as what you see in the government-wide financial statements, but there's more detail because it is broken down by fund. So I'm going to focus on the water and sewer fund specifically for this presentation. And here we have a bar graph that shows you the water and sewer fund revenues, expenses, and total net position for the 5-year period. For 2019, your operating revenues were $9.8 million, and your operating expenses were $9.7 million. You did have some non-operating items as well, but your change in net position, the results for the year, was an increase in total net position of $165,278, and your total ending net position was at $24,698,000 for the water and sewer fund.
Through the chair. Is 15 the Wolf lawsuit? Is that why
It
the
is.
expenses? Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay.
This bar graph, I broke down that total net position into the components invested in capital assets at $17.2 million at June 30, 2019, which you can't spend unless you sold your assets, and you're not likely to do that. The portion that's restricted for pension benefits at $1.9 million, which you can't spend because it's restricted for pension benefits. And then that leaves you with unrestricted net position of $5.5 million. That represents approximately 76% of your operating expenses, less depreciation. I back out depreciation because it's a non-cash expense. And so this probably gets to your point. This is a 5-year bar or line graph, of the unrestricted net position compared to your operating expenses less depreciation. In 2015, it was at 48%, but that's because your expenses were relatively high that year because of the settlement. That jumped up in 2016 to 88%, and at June 30, 2019, you're at 76%. Pages 84 through 87 of the financial statement report includes our letter of comments and recommendations, our report on internal control over financial reporting. We did have 4 comments in the audit this year. Each of those, management has provided a response for each finding. They're included in the final report. I wasn't going to go through these point for point. If you have any particular questions, I'd be happy to address those. But it is there. You are required to have an audit that is performed in accordance with government auditing standards. Your funding sources require that. What that means is there's additional planning and testing and reporting that we have to do. And one of the additional reports is that report on internal control that you see bound into your financial statements. On page 62 of the financial statement report, note 15, just wanted to point this out real quickly. There are some more accounting pronouncements. They don't seem to ever slow down or stop. GASB 84 will be effective for next year's audit on fiduciary activities, and then GASB 87 on leases the year after that. I kind of refer to this as the Auditor Employment Act section of the audit report because these standards keep coming, and there are more changes in the pipeline as well that'll be interesting. There's an exposure draft coming out that's going to change governmental fund reporting completely, but we'll talk about that later. But with that, I know I went through it really relatively quickly, but I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have. And as I said, I did bring my copy of the audit report. So if you had a specific question on a note disclosure or a financial statement, I'd be happy to address that.
Thanks. Before we turn it over to council, are there any questions from the audience? All right, with that, questions from council?
No? Pretty cut and dry.
So Cheryl, the action that today is just to receive and file, correct?
Yes.
Need a motion? I do.
I would move that we receive the financial audit report and place it in file.
Support.
Moved by Whitey, supported by Polika. Any discussion? All right, Marnie, call the roll.
Mayor Pro Tem Polika,
Yes.
Councilmember Whitey,
Yes.
Councilmember Leaks May,
Yes.
Councilmember Music,
Yes.
and Mayor Martin.
Yes, motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Easiest report you probably ever gave. With that, the next agenda item is call to audience. Call to audience is the opportunity for this meeting, keep in mind another meeting starts at 7, to bring up anything not on the agenda. If you'd like to speak, you've got 3 minutes to do so. Anybody from the audience wish to speak? You'll have another opportunity at the 7 o'clock meeting. So this is not a one-time fits all. All right, hearing none. Do I adjourn until 7 o'clock then? All right, with that, we stand in adjournment until 7 p.m. Thank you.
Yeah, that will.